India's market news headquarters. Cutting-edge analysis. Influential insights. Market-moving intelligence. Broadcasting live from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios in Mumbai.
Good morning. You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Bazaar Morning Call, kicking off the month of September, kicking off a new week, and of course kicking off a fresh trading session after what has been a pretty good run for the Nifty and for the broader markets as well. We're coming to you from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Prashant. With me, my colleague Surabhi and Nigel. Guys, hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nigel and Prashant. Prashant, don't forget, we're getting a big birthday treat this month. just putting it out there in the universe. So yes, it's a new month and a special one for Nigel D'Souza.
Absolutely. Nigel and family, actually, both my kids are September as well. So for me, September is special. But what's even more special is the way the markets have been moving up. We've never seen this before. Yeah. Can we make it 13 out of 13? That's due today.
I don't know if 13 is a good day to stand on, right?
12 straight days of gain. Then you hit the lucky or unlucky number 13. So let's see what happens.
Somehow if you could skip to 14. Right? But well, we'll see, because it's been pretty good, right? 12 days in a row, the market's been looking at gains and quite incredible. Measured small. It's not as if all of these 12 trading sessions have been, in the magnitude of 100, 200 points in the Nifty. Some have been 30 points, 40 points, actually a majority of them, and sometimes they pick up pace. I mean, the index has picked up pace. But in any case, it's a good way to come into this fresh week. The graphics will come up on your screen. U.S. equities higher on Friday. You have the S&P 500, which was up about 1%. The Nasdaq was up about 1.25% or so. So once again, I mean, the handoff from Wall Street is in the green. Dollar index that continued its bounce. It started in the middle of last week when it sort of, threatened to go into double digits. And from there, it's come up to about 101.73. I think the low was about 100.6. We're at about 101.73. The PCE, the core PCE inflation out of the US that came in line with expectations. Not very much no shockers really. This week's job data, the monthly jobs data, will essentially be the big one, the important one, in terms of how markets trade into the September FOMC. The sort of basic kind of point or the expectation is that we will get at least, there is enough on the table to get at least 25 basis point in terms of rate cut. Will we get more, though, is the only question. Some believe that they could actually kick off with not a 25, but a 50, but a 25 perhaps is on the table. Oil prices, they continue their bounce. They continue to bounce around, and they're now around $76.3 dollars a barrel. Again, very, very fast, very quickly. The bounce took us to above 80, and we are down to below 77 now. So which kind of gets us to where we are in terms of Nifty levels. Not very different. We are moving up. Nifty is holding above the 20-hourly average, and the up move seems to be extended and extending. On the way up, the daily upper Bollinger Band stands at about 25,359. It's a level we've put out in the past as well. But we've gotten up to these levels in a very, very fast way. Next target for the Nifty is 25,530. This is the 38.2% retracement of the last decline. It's a Fibonacci retracement number of 25,530. I think eventually we are headed here. I mean, at this pace, it eventually is not very far out. Now, supports come in at the 40-hourly, which is 25,056 for the Nifty. And that's about 200 points away from where we left off on Friday. The only question is that will the intermarket divergence between the Nifty, strong Nifty, and the weak Bank Nifty converge? Because the weakness in the Nifty Bank can't continue forever. And will the Bank Nifty sort of join the party as well? So that's the point. Now, Bank Nifty on Friday, it almost touched the 50% retracement of the fall, which is 51,508. Almost, but not quite. So that remains the first sort of target for the Nifty Bank. And then beyond that, you're looking at the 61.8% retracement, which is 51,943. These are very sort of near-term immediate levels that we're looking at on the Nifty Bank. Supports here come in at the hourly averages, which is 59.43 and 50,622 or so. It's nothing to really complain about, except for the fact that maybe the market sort of gone up in a straight line for, as we've been discussing, 12 days in a row. It's not as if it can't be 13, 14, 15. Markets are markets. But we're also entering a period, especially for global markets, US markets as well, where September is a high volatility month. September and October. And of course, going into the US elections, there is a fair bit which is lined up. Here, I mean, what is the track record for the Nifty? It is absolutely September for the last 10 years at least. And I looked at the data from 2014 till about 2023, the last year. I mean, I think we're down about 0.6, 0.7% or so. I mean, is that powerful, strong seasonality? Not really. I would look at the global aspect more, which kind of signifies that historically September has induced a little bit of volatility and up and down as well. So GIFT Nifty indicating an absolutely flat start. I mean, you wouldn't know looking at it that the markets are trading today. Surabhi.
Hi, Prashant. I was looking at a note that Wells Fargo put out. They look back at the last 6, I think, US presidential elections. And the analysis is the same, that there is some underperformance as you run into the event every single time. So perhaps we sort of enter that phase again. But hey, I want to start with optimistic stuff. So the fact is that India has actually underperformed in the last 1 month gone by. Whether the little bit of a residual catch-up trade will continue and help the Nifty or not, that's the question that we put up. Because in the last 1 month, the S&P 500 is up about 4%, the Dow is up about 3%, Nasdaq also about 3%. But look at some of the Asian markets. Look at what the Nikkei has done. It's back above 39,000, 7.5% of the Nikkei. The Hang Seng has done well, 6%. Nifty is up only 2%. The other index, the major market that's underperformed even us, is actually mainland China, the Shanghai Composite. So let's see, 2% contrasting with 6-7% in some of the regional markets. So will we do more? That's the question. Let's come to the macros, because there's a lot of macro news to digest straight away. Starting with the core industries data, the 8 core industries data that came out. So growth is at 6.1% versus 5.5%. And if you look at the month-on-month trends, then steel is very strong, cement is very strong, 5.5% up on cement versus 1.9%. Obviously, sequential impact playing out with the monsoons now pretty much sort of winding down. Electricity is also very strong. But GDP numbers, let's come there. So the GDP number is at 6.7%. The weakness is very much expected because we were in the election phase and the government spending was cooling off a little bit. The poll was 6.8. The number came in at 6.7. It's obviously a lot lower than last year's 8.2, also lower than last quarter, about 4-5 quarters of the weakest number that we've seen over the past 4 quarters. But within this, the strong parts are manufacturing, electricity and construction. Financial services, real estate are actually slightly weak. But the one number that perhaps, holds a lot of promise for the consumer space is private final consumption. That number is at 7.5% versus just about 5.5% year on year. So big growth, even sequentially, there's a big growth coming in. More macro numbers, GST, no problems there. The numbers are very, very steady on GST. Collections are up about 10%, 1.74 lakh crores is what we have. It's a little lower than the previous month's number, which was close to 1.8, but year on year there's a steady clip. Auto sales, the micro numbers that help us figure out what's really happening with the economy, and here trends are very mixed. Two-wheeler names continue to chug along, and TVS has done extremely well, by the way. TVS 13% year on year growth, 11% month on month growth. Hero Motor is kind of steady. Eicher is a bit muted. On the passenger vehicle side, things are quite interesting. Tata Motors is weak. For Maruti, it is actually SUVs which have saved the day. SUVs have shown 7% growth. Compact car sales have declined very, very sharply. We'll tell you more about this as we go along. CVs are still weak, and that's something to keep in mind. There's no improvement in CV sales, either for Tata Motors or for Eicher CV. Coming to now the fund flows, we've got FIIs buying about 5,300 crores in equities. Domestic institutions selling about 3,200 crores in equities. But again, it's a lot of block trades, so need to watch this. Last but not the least, of course, so we'll hear more from our colleagues, and Nigel will tell us more, because this F&O criteria of including or excluding stocks in the market, that also came out over the weekend. I don't think too much change from the earlier draft, Nigel?
Well, there are some changes actually, Surabhi. But guys, when was the last time we had a 12-session winning streak?
It was, I think, some 3 decades ago. Is it? I don't know.
It was in 1993. So that's the last time we had 12, and we've never had 13 on a row. So that's the big task this morning, right? Can the Nifty get 13 times lucky? That's going to be important today. If we can end in the green today, it'll be the 13th straight session that we end in the green. And overnight, there's not going to be any shock up, because the US markets, well, they are shut because they have a public holiday. So those are the big, couple of data points with regard to the domestic and the global queue. What about positioning in the index futures? The FIs, they were net long. they've added some long positions. So, start of the series, they were long, they've added some long positions. Clients, they were short, they've added some short positions as well. So both of them, they are now positioned at opposite ends of the spectrum. Just want to note that normally the clients have been getting it right. So let's see how this goes. For the time being, they're at opposite ends. What about the FI positioning in percentage terms? Well, they are at around 72% on the long side, which is the highest you've seen in multiple weeks. So that's about the FI positioning. Let's get you a couple of FNO cues then. The Nifty Bank, it did fairly okay, in Friday's trading session. And there was about a short covering that we saw because the open interest was lower by around 1.5%. The PCR, that's moved to around 1.4. Remember, normally at around 1.5, 1.6, that's the upper end of the band. So the put writing is getting a little bit too easy. It's moving to the up end of the band. Normally at around 1.5 odd, we see some kind of a pullback. So just keep that data point in mind. Let's pull up the options data. Two strikes, very, very active. The 25,250 put, well, that's the one you should be tracking. Fair bit of open interest build up. And the 25,300 calls. So some writing is what we're seeing with the premium at around 120 rupees. Which brings us to the levels. Now, on the upside, we can go to any level, the way the Nifty has been moving. So I'm more concerned about the support levels. The first support going by the options data is at this 25,100. So that's the support particularly for today. So that's important. The next support I'm looking at is 24,850 because on the way up, we made a bit of a meal at these levels. So that's going to be important support. And finally, the 20 DMA line in the sand. Till we hold on to this, you'll have to say the uptrend is pretty much well and truly on. The Nifty Bank, well, it did well in Friday's trading session, but it's unable to hold at higher levels. It ended with a gain of close to around 200 points. But what it did was it ended very, very close to the 50 DMA. You wanted to decisively cross this mark, then it's on its way to that 52,500 odd mark. So that's the important data point. You'd like the Nifty Bank from a bullish perspective to build on to those gains. In terms of the SEBI criteria that came out with regard to inclusion, exclusion on Friday, post-market hours, well, there are two stocks that I'm going to be tracking because of this. Because going by the revised criteria, there are two stocks that can make it in. One is Zomato and the other one is Jio Financial Services. And that's important because if they make it to the FNO list, then they could probably make it to the Nifty in the early part of 2025. So two stocks I'll be looking at. Both those two should be up for you on the screen. Zomato and Jio Financial, they've corrected a little bit from the top. So added reason to keep an eye out on both these two names.
Okay, Nigel, thank you so much for that. And speaking of course stocks, there's a lot of individual corporate action we have to track. This mega merger between Gujarat Gas, Gujarat State Petroleum, GSPL. So that's something to keep an eye out. A bunch of PSU stocks have made it to the Navratna status. So let's see if there's any trading buzz. And there's also a Bajaj Housing Finance when we'll have a new IPO from the Bajaj stable. That's next week. But I think, the excitement and the chatter will be there around it as well.
No, absolutely. And, we'll sort of get you details of what they filed in terms of the prospectus, etc.